Disclaimer, this is not new content. This is a video for my English midterm that's due in like 8 hours. So hey y'all, it's Taylor Ivy and welcome back to my channel. Today for you guys, I am actually doing an English assignment, and so quite honestly, I don't expect anyone other than my English professor to watch this video. However, I do understand that there are a few subscribers on here, and I don't really feel like uploading it private. I'm just gonna upload it just to be there. So today I am presenting my literacy narrative, which was a really cool assignment because we basically got to talk about our positive or negative influences with English classes throughout our whole entire school career, from preschool to senior year in high school. And so if you know me, you know that I obviously picked negative because although I did enjoy my time in my school district, I definitely had something to complain about every single day when I got home from school. So I am going to, I think what I'm going to do for you guys, or for my professor really, is I'm going to read my introduction and my conclusion, and then I'll just kind of talk about my body paragraphs. That way this video isn't too long. So let's just get right into it. Fun fact, this class is at 7 a.m. for me. We love going to a school that's in a different time zone for you than you. Anywho. Okay. Adolescence is a time period where students are extremely impressionable by their school's environment and the world around them in general. This includes the student body as a whole, but more importantly, the specific classroom that students reside in for a majority of the school year, whether that be the one homeroom of a second grader or the 8 different classrooms of a junior in high school. One of the most influential classrooms a student will ever encounter in his or her English classroom, from elementary to high school, is I'm sorry. One of the most influential classrooms a student will ever encounter in his or her English classroom. From elementary to high school, the way an English teacher executes their classroom procedures will heavily influence how a student will function in school and grow to think of themselves as an individual. So basically what my thesis is regarding is just talking about how English, along with history, but this is for English, will heavily impact how a student functions in society, in school, and as an individual, because in English, that is one of the classes that you are learning about history. And like how in English we're always talking about Shakespeare and how Shakespeare was writing all the way back when, and we still talk about his stuff till today, and we see movies and everything in the media with the same plots that he created and just how it causes us to function. And so the next paragraph is just a really quick theoretical framework where I describe the 2 articles that I chose for my class's reading to use as evidence for my literacy narrative. And so I chose When the First Voice You Hear Is Not Your Own by Jacqueline Royster. And this article discusses how African Americans are raised with an emphasis on being respectable, as well as how our voices are silenced in every aspect of the public. And then the second article I chose was Upward Mobility in Writing Portfolios for Minority Students Through Deplet's Lens, which is an article about well, I'll talk about this later, but it is an article about how African American students are at a disadvantage in the classroom because the teaching style adopted and used by most English teachers in America is not the teaching style that we learned best with growing up as Black kids. So let's just get into it. So for my first body paragraph, I basically just talk about how I've been in the same school district, kindergarten through 12th grade, which is kind of a focal point of my essay because there are a lot of kids who move around, and so they might not be able to associate things that are happening at their elementary school to things that are happening at their high school, because if you're moving from place to place to place, you obviously won't experience the same district that has the same hiring criteria for all of their teachers, no matter what grade it's in. So that is pretty important because I talk about how you start to pick up patterns, and you also do not realize the freedom given to teachers by public school systems that negatively affects our confidence in the classroom. And so I start to go into my very first anecdote, and I basically just talk about how in 4th grade, I wanted to start writing in cursive. And my English teacher, I asked her, I was like, hey girl, I'd really love to write in cursive. In my mind, I needed to be good at cursive because I was convinced I was going to be famous and I needed to be good at it for my signatures and whatnot. And so I was like, hey girl, I'd really love to write in cursive in class. And she was like, oh, write me an essay about whatever and I'll decide if you can write in it. And so I wrote her a little essay and she was like, yeah, no. And so because of that, I just talk about how all throughout school, I just thought I had the ugliest handwriting and I never really shared my notes with my friends, and I never, ever went up to the board to like write in math or anything, just out of like pure fear that somebody was going to talk about my handwriting, yes. And so I basically just talk about how the statements my 4th grade teacher made to me about cursive wasn't beneficial, and it didn't dawn on me until much later that instead of her saying, no, I can't read your handwriting like this, she could have been like, oh, you can't write in it right now, but if you use these X, Y, and Z tools to practice, maybe you can write in cursive next semester or be ready to write in cursive in 5th grade or whatever the fact may be. She really didn't try to help me. She was just like, no. And I was like crushed. And so I connected this specific example to when the first voice you hear is not your own. And the quote that I used was, students may find what we do to be alienating and disheartening. Their experiences are not seen and their voices are not heard. We can find ourselves participating sometimes consciously, sometimes not, in what Patricia calls spirit murder. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that body paragraph. And so for the next body paragraph, I start with, along with confidence, the way teachers present their lessons can also be a huge factor in why students lack motivation as they get older. And in this body paragraph, I basically just talk about, number 1, summer reading assignments. I really get into how beneficial these assignments can really be. And then number 2, I talk about dialectical journals. And so of course summer reading assignments are, I'm gonna say the word important, but I like to enjoy my summer and I don't enjoy doing an assignment, but I do understand the need to keep your mind stimulated during the summer vacation, just because once we get back to school, it is rough to kind of get back into the student mindset. And then, which was really just a side note, the dialectical journals is really what I dug into, because, okay, let me see, just because in dialectical journals, you pull a quote from whatever article, play, speech, whatever you're reading, and you're expected to identify theme and syntax and personification and all these different things. And it's great, but it doesn't do anything for you. In my personal opinion, I never gained any writing skills, and they never teach you what is good about it. Like, unless you're writing a specific essay where it asks you to identify those things, then it's not helpful, because most of the time they ask you to identify these things and then apply it to how it aids in the author conveying their purpose or their theme for that piece that you're talking about. But your teachers never tell you how to connect the two. They just tell you, oh, identify this, and they expect you to pull your thesis and your evidence just like out of thin air. And so I never found those type of assignments beneficial, really. And so I tie that to a lack of motivation, and I also tie it back to patterns. And so basically what I talk about is how when we continue to do these types of assignments, we're doing it for the grade and the grade only. We only want that number in the grade book to be a high number. And so we know that because these assignments aren't really doing anything for us and we're not applying this outside of the classroom, that we're not really motivated to work that hard. And the piece I decided to tie it to is Dr. Akasi's super long title. But basically the article that I was talking about earlier that talks about how Black students are at a disadvantage in the classroom. And so the quote that I used for this one, let's see. If more educators explained writing assignments in a more structured manner for minority students, then more Black pupils would begin to submit quality writings. And so it basically just ties together with my argument that because these assignments aren't really giving us anything to, one, understand and comprehend, and two, it's just not enough for us to feel like we're getting challenged in the classroom and want to produce quality writings, because we're not personally getting anything out of it. And so another thing that article touches on is how African American students are often raised in more structured type households. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but they're raised in more structured type households, and the teaching style most commonly used by school districts is called fluency, which basically refers to how English teachers will often give very vague feedback on writing assignments and say, or they'll just write a question mark or say, what does this mean, or expand more, but they don't tell the students what exactly they need to expand on, or how the different evidences they pick can be more beneficial to their pieces. So yeah, and it just overall connects to my point of lack of motivation. And so my conclusion says, you cannot dispute the fact that reading and writing are essential skills that every student needs to know to be successful in any career field. However, we have to understand that children and teenagers spend their whole school careers being shaped by how teachers treat them and operate in class. It is important that teachers realize how big of an impact they have on students and how the confidence and motivation levels they develop in school will stick with them for the rest of their lives. And so, like I said earlier, this was a really interesting prompt for me to write about, just because obviously school districts aren't going around asking students, hey, like, do you just love your English class? They're not doing that. So it was really fun to write about, and it was a really good, this is our very first essay of the semester, so it was a really good essay to kind of start the school year with start the school year off with. One, because everything is so new being a college student, and two, because it's so different from what you normally write. And so I talked about also in our little portfolio, we have to do a Dear Reader letter, and it asks us what our strengths and weaknesses are. And I mentioned how my strengths are that in my essay, my personal anecdotes are really good, but I could use some work on like clarity and just some other things. So obviously I don't expect y'all to go look at my portfolio, and I won't even link it so y'all won't know where to find it. But yes, thank you for listening if you're not my English professor and you decided to watch this video. But that is my literacy narrative, and yeah. So that being said, again, if you're not my English professor and you watch this to the end, I am definitely thinking about doing a life of the college student video like at home. So if you guys want to see that, make sure you are staying updated on my social medias. That way y'all can see what I'm getting ready to post and asking for video ideas. And other than that, I hope y'all are being scholars and staying safe and focusing on your mental health. Have a blessed one. Bye.